Yo, what's poppin', everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Vitamin C's with me, your boy Adam Taylor. As usual, I'm joined by my homie, my compadre, my co-host in crime, Mr. Tim Sheils. What's going on, Tim?
Not much, man. I'm
I
trying out the new light
intro.
setup. Yeah, nailed it. Absolutely.
Yeah, so you got the ring light up, you got the small light up, you got the. Is that a man in a rocket? Is it a football?
Yeah, it's an astronaut in a rocket. Yeah.
So you got Buzz Aldrin, or
I don't think he's got a name yet. He's just a light.
we're gonna need to name him. I tell you what,
Yeah.
everyone comment the name that we should name him. The two most popular ones, or like some of the comments, whichever ones are the most popular, we'll make a
Give him a
decision
name.
and we'll name
Could be
him.
like Spaceman, could be X-Man.
Oh no, we need to like Ralph. You know, just like a random name, dude. Like if anyone watching's named Ralph, I'm not taking a shot at you or anything. It's just the first
Astro.
name. Astro. Yeah. Anyway. We want to know though. Like inquiring minds want to know what should we name the spaceman, and please, be creative with it. Anyway, there's a lot of trade rumors flying around. We're coming close to the trade deadline. 3 weeks tomorrow, if I'm correct. But the Juancho Hernan Gomez, or as I like to call him, Bo Cruz, TPE expires tomorrow. That is Thursday, the 19th of January. That TPE is on its last legs before they pull the plug. There's a chance Boston use it. Most likely they don't. But there are a few rumors floating around. So what we're doing here, just, nice 10, 15-minute segment just to wet the whistle ready for the podcast tomorrow. Or for Friday, for when you get it. By the time we recorded it, we released it. But we're just looking at the trade rumors, what's going around there. So I think the prominent one, the one that we're going to kind of sell this episode with, is there's a rumor flying around. Brian Robb from MassLive was the one that kind of wrote it up and released it. He put it out there into the ether. There's a rumor flying around that the Golden State Warriors are showing some interest in Payton Pritchard. Makes perfect sense from how the Warriors like to play to what Pritchard brings to the table with the shooting, the being able to push the pace. He's he can play off ball. He's spent some time at the 2 guard under Stevens, became a really good small screener under Udoka. Hasn't really developed this year because he's just not getting the consistent playing time. Tim, how are you feeling about that, man? I know that you were kind of reluctant to be like, yeah, man, anyone but the Warriors.
Pretty much, yeah. We were kind of looking at it, and I wanted to look and see if there was anyone on the Warriors that I would even entertain. I'm not going to throw any names out just because I honestly don't think that the Celtics would do any kind of deal that involves Pritchard with the Warriors. I don't think they want to deal with the Warriors at all. And I don't blame them. I mean, right now the Warriors are dealing with a lot of depth issues because of injuries. And because of that, of course they're going to look for guys who are serviceable, who are dependable. Right now, the Celtics have Pritchard, and he's the 4th guard on their depth chart, which is an amazing luxury to have. And it's twofold. We've gone back and forth in this all the time. You can move him if you want to get depth at a different position. If you want to get some size with some shooting, you can go ahead and use him as a primary trade chip. Or you hold on to him because, you have no idea what's going to happen with Malcolm Brogdon. Marcus Smart missed a little bit of time. These guys are going to get their bumps and bruises just with the way that they naturally play, and Brogdon's injury history is enough to make you plan for that kind of thing. So he's an amazing break glass in case of emergency or contingency plan for injuries. So with that being said, I totally see them just holding on to him. I mean, they also, in the article, it mentions that the Warriors aren't the only team that are sniffing around. That's something we already saw, but the Warriors specifically being named is new information, so that's something to monitor at the very least. But I don't like it. I don't like making the Warriors better, and I think that Pritchard would help them, and I'm just not about that.
I think the biggest thing for me is the fact that one is Payton Pritchard's cost controlled. He's under team contract until the end of next season, 2023-24, and then he's a restricted free agent. So there's a lot of team control on that deal. So for a team like the Warriors that, they're already incredibly expensive, they're trying to stagger 2 different timelines right now. They've got the Steph, Clay, Draymond timeline, but then they've got that James Wiseman, Jordan Poole. My head is going blank when I'm speaking to these guys.
Dante. They got Dante in there too.
Why is my head going? Jonathan Kuminga. There we go. Yeah. Moses Moody. They've got that group, right? So they've got these 2, and then you've got Andrew Wiggins. It's just kind of in between both timelines. So being able to go for a guy that fits the way you play, is very viable in the playoffs. He's battle tested in the playoffs. Is cost controlled with a lot of team control over his future as well as the present. It makes perfect sense. He fits like a glove. He can play. He hustles on defense. I said this on Twitter the other day, but like he plays way bigger than what he is. He got a block in the last game against Charlotte. You know, he just hustles his butt off. So I can see why Golden State would be a good fit for Pritchard. Now, from my standpoint, you mentioned Brogdon's injury history. You've also got to remember Jaylen Brown misses time each year. You know, there's been rumors of knee issues there from when Danny kind of let it slip. People also forget that Marcus Smart still has a piece of glass in his hand. You know what I mean? That got dropped. I think it was in January 2022 when that first kind of came out. Like when Smart still got glass in his hand, he has spells where he loses feeling in that hand. That could cause him to miss a game or two if it swells up. Maybe he takes some contact in the wrong way. There's always an issue there. Having somebody like Pritchard, for all the reasons we just spoke about, regardless of the money, but just the playing style, that's high level insurance. Now, can you keep Pritchard happy beyond this season in that role? I'm not sure. But right now, just selling him on another 4 or 5 months of, hey, you've gone this far through the season in this role. If you stick with it, there's a chance you get a ring at the end of it. And that could help you in future contract negotiations. You know, if you go from Boston to Golden State and then you're challenging for a ring in Golden State, you're going to have a good career of playing on contending teams. And you're going to be within a rotation. But right now, like I said this again, I think I was writing it out earlier. Last year, Pritchard went through the same issue, but the difference is Brogdon's not getting traded the same way Dennis Schroeder did. So I do think Pritchard's time in Boston's numbered, like his days are numbered, but I just don't see it being now. I see him being somebody that gets moved in a deal or is part of an ancillary deal during the summer.
Yeah, and I think that's a totally fair expectation. Just because right now, if you are trying to make a title run, then you want like all the best pieces that you possibly can. And while it's always been tempting for me to go ahead and shore up depth at another position. You can always look at the buyout market. And that leads into another thing that Keith Smith was mentioning specifically when it pertains to that trade exception. You know, the Celtics are expected to be major players on the buyout market because they don't have to make a trade. Like right now, like they've got the disabled player exception from Danilo Gallinari. They're going to be able to outbid most people on the buyout market. On top of just having overall like one of the best records in the NBA, they are a strong like contender for a title right now. They're coming off a finals appearance. They've got Jason Tatum, who is an MVP caliber player, who is a legitimate candidate for the MVP, and they're playing great basketball. So if there's anyone that gets bought out that's interesting, that fits the needs of the team, the Celtics are going to be on, speed dial for those guys. So if that's the case, then there's a chance that they go ahead and they just wait for the buyout market to come around. So, maybe they don't use this trade exception that is expiring tomorrow. I think they said in the article, one of the sources that Keith had cited, obviously anonymous, but saying that the real difficult problem with doing any of these kind of trades is you're looking for roughly about $7 million in salary, but you want to get the right exact player.
And that's almost impossible.
It's really tricky because the guys who fit into that kind of salary, you got to get both teams to play ball on that. And no pun intended there. Like you need two teams to trade and you need that player to be available, or you're going to end up, paying through the nose for what could potentially be a rental. Now, if it's the right player and you weigh the cost, the pros and cons of it, and it's more tax dollars, but it increases your chances of getting a title, then they'll do that. Even if it means that
but
that
it's
player
what you have
walk.
to give up as well, right? I remember
it's the picks.
A few days ago, Dan Favale, I think I've pronounced that name right, from Bleacher Report, he wrote an article, and his argument was, hey, it's all well and good trading away these future picks and being like, hey, we're trying to win a championship now. But how much guarantee is there, assuming Jaylen Brown doesn't become Supermax eligible? To do that, he needs an All-NBA team or an MVP or a Defensive Player of the Year. Now, I'm not saying he's playing at an All-NBA level, but competition's really fierce. We're seeing it in the All-Star voting. Imagine it when it's the All-NBA. If Jaylen Brown doesn't become Supermax eligible, if he's now considered somewhat of a flight risk. This was what Favale was writing. So at that point, when do you stop trading away first round picks? When do you start keeping some insurance in the bank to be like, hey, well, if we think you're going to get moved, if we think you're a flight risk and we're going to try and move you, maybe we want to attach a pick and go and try and get an upgrade or whatever. And then there was another argument that I saw, I think it was Jared Weiss, right? Like, hey, this bench is aging. Eventually, you're going to start needing to use first-round draft picks just to start adding some youth to that bench and keeping young guys coming through on that conveyor belt of talent. So when you're talking about, hey, we can upgrade now, great, but a legitimate upgrade is probably going to need a pick as well. And it's just, there's a lot of draft picks that's already been given out. You don't really own many first for a while. I think the next one's 2026. Or around that time, 26, something like that. I'm saying off the top of my head at this point. But I'd be very concerned about giving up more picks. I actually kind of fall in line with Vale there, but I know then Chris Forsberg yesterday, so that would be Tuesday, January 17th, wrote an article like, hey, it's okay to be slightly reckless right now. You're trying to win a championship. It's all chips in. So you've got people on both sides, and I understand both arguments. But for me, I am very much in the camp of, unless Jalen becomes super max eligible, and you're not going to know that till the end of the season. Like, you need to be a little bit more conservative, and finding ways to bring in players without giving up assets is going to be the best bet, right? But the problem with the buyout market is trades need to happen for guys to start getting bought out, and no one's making deals right now. There's 3 weeks left. Hopefully things pick up. But at the minute, so many teams feel like they've got a shot at the play-in that they're not really willing to part with anybody. I think there's 2 guaranteed sellers right now if you want to look around the league. It's tough, man. It's a really tough sell.
Yeah, I think the one big thing that we heard, and this is an interesting wrinkle because it brings me back to last year. So Jakob Poeltl is apparently, the asking price for him is 2 first-round picks, which to me seems crazy because, one, I get that he's a coveted player. He is not under salary control. You can match him in the summer if you trade for him because of bird rights, but he's going to be a free agent after this season. So 2 first-round picks for him is a really crazy asking price. However, something that I didn't realize until I read in an article today, I can't remember who wrote it off the top of my head, but it might have been in The Athletic, that he was apparently last year, the Spurs, when they were offering up Derek White, the asking price was 2 first-round picks.
That was Jared Weiss, I think.
Yeah, and I thought that's what it was. And so the Celtics ended up not doing 2 first-round picks. One was a first-round pick outright, and the other one I think was a swap.
It's a future swap, yeah.
So not quite 2 first-round picks, but the ability to swap down the line in that, like we've talked about before, could be eventually converted into just outright. You get that.
But they also got a former lottery pick in Romeo Langford that's developing for them now.
Yeah.
And they got Richardson.
Yeah. So, and Richardson's been solid for him too. Yeah. So it's just interesting with that because it was something that I didn't know that was like a little wrinkle there. And it definitely, with the deals that the Spurs have made with the Celtics, it's clear that there's like a really good working relationship there. However, more Jakob Poeltl news has come out talking about. Yeah, Jakob Poeltl knows. The news about Poeltl is interesting because it just seems like it's just recycled stuff, right? Like there's nothing really new, no real substance to it other than significant interest.
For all you know, is the Celtics have circled back around and said, hey, have you changed your stance on Jakob yet? The Spurs have said no. Someone's leaked it because there's been that conversation. Boom, there's new interest. Well, no, there was just hey, how much interest doesn't really seem to be as fierce as what we thought. Are you willing to bring down your asking price? They say no. You say cool. Now, me personally, I'm like, hey, big man insurance is great. I'm a big fan of finding an additional big. I think Luke Cornett's been absolutely solid. I try not to look at what he's doing now and be like he can replicate that in the playoffs when you're in a 7-game series and teams are scheming against you. I think if you can upgrade, you do, right? Like I threw out that Hartenstein idea. I log into Instagram a few days back and everyone's tearing it apart, whatever. I think Poeltl's an upgrade. I think Hartenstein would be an upgrade too, but Poeltl's obviously the best out of them 3. But you can't retain him, because you've got to pay Grant. Then you'd have to pay Poeltl. You've got that Jaylen Brown deal coming up next season. If he does get Supermax eligible, there's a lot of guaranteed money all of a sudden on the books. It gets really hard to build out a competitive bench and so forth. And as far as I'm concerned, Grant Williams is more conducive to the modern NBA and being successful in the modern NBA than what Jakob Poeltl is. He can pass, he can screen, he can shoot the free, he can attack off the dribble, blah, blah, blah. He's versatile defensively. Poeltl's very much a big body that can rebound, play some drop defense, can score on putbacks and stuff. But that versatility means a lot to me. I like versatile guys. So if you have to choose between being able to pay Grant or being able to pay Poeltl, then obviously you choose Grant. Now, can you use Poeltl? Can you acquire him? Get the best out of him for the rest of this season. Give him a chance to show himself off in a bigger market, and then use his presence there to kind of leverage your negotiations with Grant and be like, hey, if you're not willing to take a slight discount, then we'll just sign Poeltl and you can go do your thing, but you're walking away from a contending team. Can you do that? Possibly. Should you? No. I think that Grant's earned the right to get paid, and I think that the Celtics have put him in a position where he's been able to grow. So now there should be some mutual agreement to be willing to work towards a deal together. I wouldn't start trying to taint that with leverage plays or anything like that. I like Poeltl. I just don't think he fits what the Celtics needs in terms of how much he's going to cost, the tax dollars it's going to add on, the assets you're going to need to part with to bring him in the first place. And does he move the needle that much that you're willing to do all of that for a guy that's going to be here for a few months and then bounce? I'm just not sure.
Or does he fit with Rob? And I think that's the bigger question, because if you
can't play them two together.
Exactly, right? And I think that it's the exact opposite, I think, with Grant Williams. Like, Grant Williams is a great fit for this team. You know, he gives you 3 points shooting. He can give you spacing. He's learning to create off the dribble, which is great. He's attacking. You know, he gives you all the things that you need. So I don't see, it doesn't read like a Brad Stevens move, right? To like go ahead and then trade for Poeltl and use that as like some kind of leverage move.
Brad's done. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No, go on.
Brad's done a fantastic job of building a versatile rotation where everyone can handle the rock, everyone can shoot, everyone can pass, everyone can defend multiple positions. Even when you're putting Al Horford in drop, you know he can slide down and guard 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, I'm not saying he's a switch 1 through 5. Like, when I say legitimate guy that can switch 1 through 5, I think there's 5, 6 of those guys in the league.
Yeah.
Now, are you capable of switching 1 through 5 in short spurts? Yes, I think Al Horford is most definitely capable of that, but he's getting old. There needs to be a replacement coming in. Poeltl can probably slide down a few positions. He's big. He's got the wingspan. He can impact guys, like impact shot making, impact shot releases. But he's not versatile enough for him to scream out a Brad Stevens deal. For me personally, I just don't think that's on the cards. No, yeah. I don't know. Maybe if they drop their asking price to 2 seconds, Pritchard, I don't know, something else in there, then maybe you do that at that point. But I'm more about upgrading the wing at the moment than I am upgrading the big man spot, although I wouldn't say no.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple other names that are flowing out there, ones we've already heard, Saddiq Bey, Chris Duarte out of Indiana interests me a little bit. I think he's an interesting target.
Shout out Keith Smith. He was the one that kind of put that out there.
And I like that idea of dealing a protected first rounder to Indiana for him, just because I think he's a guy that has a high floor and he would slide into that rotation. And I mean, he's torched the Celtics. Obviously, he's got some down numbers this year, but part of that has to do with the fact of just that roster crunch. They brought in Nesmith, right? And then they also had Mathurin. And then you've got Hallie there too.
McLaurin's a baller, and Nesmith is playing as a baller right now. Like,
it's hard. He's older. He's an older player too. Like, he's only been in the league for a little while, but he's still on the older side because of how long he stayed in college. I think he went to Oregon, so he's also a Duck, former Duck. So he probably has some kind of relationship with Pritchard. Duck. Yes, well, Oregon, but yeah, Mighty. I suppose they are.
Do you know I watched all 3 of the Mighty Ducks again the other week? I watched them at least 4 times a year. 1, 2, and 3. At least 4. Man, I'm really
back to back.
Yeah, I love that shit, man. Love it.
But, you know, the only other name I think about, and we could probably save it for another day, but Rui Hachimura being available is interesting to me. But does Rui interest you at all? It's another RFA situation, so you'd run into the same deal you're running into with trying to pay 2 guys if you are going out for, you know, Saddiq Bey or going out for Poeltl. But he is an RFA, so he has that benefit of you being able to match. But with Grant there too, do you weigh that cost? Do you think about it at least?
Yeah, I mean, Rui brings in more size. He brings in, I think he's probably a bit of a better rebounder than what Grant is. But it stops there, right? I think Grant is a more complete player than what Rui is. I think that the size to an extent, is intriguing. It makes you stop and look like, yeah, we could use that, especially a Celtics team that at times does lack in size. But for me, I'm not sold, right? One of the biggest things I'd like to see is an injection of some additional athleticism. I'd like to see that. It's kind of why I'm starting to lean towards converting JD Davison's contract. If Pritchard was to move, or even if he doesn't, give him Davison like that, doing what they did with Hauser last year, converting him to a contract for the end of the season, evaluate him again, whether you want to give him a deal or not, but just inject some speed and athleticism, put him in that Javante Green role. Do you know what I mean? And just every now and again, when we just need a spark, we can put JD Davison in there. And sometimes it's going to go well, sometimes it's not, but we know that there's going to be an additional lob threat, somebody that's going to sprint the floor, blah, blah, blah. I think that could be a route to go, just wing depth and some athleticism. Size, you might need it, but their defense has been exceptional over the last few weeks. You put in that double big lineup, they just look almost impenetrable. Perimeter defense is fine. I don't see how they're being hindered by a lack of size right now, to the point where I'd be going for Rui, where just like, we need his height, we need his length. It's just, Grant's just a better player. I don't see where Rui gets his minutes. I'd much rather be looking at someone on the wing.
Yeah, I guess to put a bow on it before we wrap up, I think the one thing that was notable is that they're looking to try and shore up that depth. They're not looking for like a playoff guy. If he can play in the playoffs, great, but they're looking for someone in the regular season who can eat some minutes and take the pressure and workload off of Jason and Jalen, because they know that if they were playing 40 minutes a night now, it's just not going to pay off when they're trying to make this finals run.
Nobody's gas tank's unlimited.
No.
You know, and it's not just that as well. It's, hey, if Jason is gassed or is showing signs of being gassed in the second round, well, now we can reduce your minutes. If we're like, say it's like the Celtics are up 3-1 and you know that game 6 is at home and you're on the road and you're just like, you know what, JT, we're going to play you 30 or 34. Now, I don't think this would ever happen. But if you've got a very reliable wing that you can bring off the bench, you don't mind doing that. I wouldn't say in a game like closing out a series, like that's probably an extreme example. But having the option to do that, if somebody gets hurt, having a reliable veteran you can bring in that can plug that gap for however many games. And that's one of the reasons Poeltl's such a big thing at the moment, because Rob Williams is always that risk. And then if you move Cornet in, you have to start relying on Blake Griffin a little bit more. Just bringing in another veteran that can plug gaps makes perfect sense. Personally, I'm kind of expecting nothing and then a little move on the buyout market. And I'm completely fine with that. We're talking about the best team in the NBA by record at the moment. We're talking about a team with a 51-point Jason Tatum burger the other night. We're talking about a team with Jaylen Brown that's pushing for that All-NBA because he wants that Supermax money. Marcus Smart's out here dropping double-doubles in passing assists. Grant Williams has just become the ultimate rotation guy. Like, we're picking hairs, man. Like, we're talking about a team making a trade when we're like, there's barely anywhere to upgrade in the first place.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But definitely try and improve it, because that's what Apple do with every iPhone, and they just get a little bit smaller and we still buy them. So who knows?
Fair enough.
With that being said, we're going to leave you to it. We'll be back again on Friday. Everybody have an amazing Wednesday evening and an awesome Thursday, and peace.
Cheers.